It's a one. Kia ora everybody, what's up? It is Robert and I am joined in the other shirt, not the whiskey wall. It looks different, but I'm feeling still pretty comfortable. I'm joined by some creative media weapons that understand movies, TV, and all sorts of cool things that are very, very sweet. And we're doing a awards season wrap up. Now this is gonna be very simple. I'm gonna introduce it. I'm gonna flip and get my ass out of here because I haven't seen Parasite. I've never watched a Star Wars. I don't know anything about Harry Potter or the ecosystem. I am officially useless. So,
get out of here.
Let's do a quick intro round because you're both extremely smart human beings. And then I've got a special guest who's also part of the Switch whānau, who is a award-winning upcoming director and an actor and someone very opinionated when it comes to all this cool shit. So I'll introduce to my left. Oh, actually, ladies first. Let's start on the other side.
Thank you. My name's Tamar, and I am an entertainment publicist. Is probably the easiest way to sum up what I do.
Sounds dangerous.
Yeah, a little bit dangerous. A little bit of Ray Donovan in the mix sometimes. Yeah. So film and TV, I work on a lot of local productions, a lot of local TV productions, and also some overseas stuff that's shooting over here.
So essentially you're the behind-the-scenes entertainment weapons that if I was ever to be on Shorten Street, you would save me after a bad night out at Soul Bar.
I have done that.
I can imagine. We can tell some stories of this. Okay, perfect.
Ray Donovan is such a cool job description. Mine is not that cool. Hi, I'm Charlotte. I'm content strategist at Sky with their digital products. Happy to be here with these fine people.
My name's Steve. I'm the editor of flicks.co.nz. It's a site where people check out movie times and find out what to watch. My gig there is running a team of writers who cover film reviews and film features. We've been doing a lot of Oscar coverage and been on top of things through the awards season, and probably have a couple of opinions about it.
It feels like everyone's just about to unleash to talk about all things television and movies and everything. But I'm going to exit stage left. I'm going to introduce my man, Simon Gilchrist. Simon, please come in, tag team out, and just absolutely unleash and do your creative thing, and I'll let you get into it. Good luck.
Future Oscar winner?
Jump in there, mate.
I hope so.
Maybe, yeah.
Kia ora, I'm Simon. I am a young creative working here at Switch, and I'm also an actor and director. So I just do films and theatre and anything that comes my way. And I love movies, so...
Simon, don't hassle me if I review something of yours, whether it's good or bad. It's like, that's just my tip. Let's just keep things friendly and not bring up any little 100%. Stuff.
It's good to meet me in early days, so we can establish establish this relationship, and then from there...
And then I'm instantly ethically compromised.
Exactly. or it gives you more right to roast things I make.
Okay, cool.
And also you're meeting a great publicist as well if you ever... When you get your first big Spielberg movie, she'll help you with that.
Yeah, Jurassic Park 5. I can't wait. Yeah. Cool. So, award season wrap up.
Yeah.
What are your guys' thoughts on just the whole season overall? Happy, sad, things that were good, bad?
Ooh. Shall I launch into that?
Go.
I feel like it felt a little lighter this year than the year before. I feel like probably the Me Too shadow was kind of hanging over awards season 2019. It still was there, but I feel like we could move on a bit. Still a little bit of controversy around the place with like BAFTA's So White and the female director, lack of female directors being acknowledged. But that's just conversations that probably need to be had as opposed to kind of anything that's hugely like ooky. lurking over the whole industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was kind of a sense of foregone conclusion to some of the awards this year, maybe more so than past years. And I think
Agreed.
that when you've got basically your 4 actor award winners being locked
Yeah.
really early on in the
Super
season,
early,
No
yeah.
surprises.
then
yeah.
they're kind of some of your, like Taika and Bong accepted. When you sort of take your actors out of the mix as people that are in competition with one another, it kind of just deflates the drama of the awards somewhat.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Agree.
they're the ones you kind of want out scrapping and really lobbying for position. And once you've got, Joaquin was a dead set for best actor winner right from the start
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
awards season.
Renee, pretty much the
Absolutely,
same.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I think once those pieces fell into place, it kind of meant that the scraps were going to happen in slightly less thrilling categories throughout
Yeah.
the season.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that it's a planned thing? Because we've seen it before with, like, I was mentioning this before about Casey Affleck and how he kind of got all the awards for Manchester by the Sea, and then the voters become aware of that, and they could use that for ratings and things like that. Because the Oscars this year, I remember, because it's as the conclusion of it, were at its lowest rating of all time, but they changed the game by. There was a build-up of 1917 to win all the Best Picture
Yeah.
awards, everything,
100%.
and then they came back with two Oscars, with like Roger Deakins and stuff, which was good. But then Parasite comes in and like kind of changes the game. What do you guys think of the people who run the show being possibly aware of it and using that to their advantage to get people and to like get those wins, so more people get excited about it?
I think that understanding the Oscar voting process is really critical to this as the final
Yes.
award in the season. So, the Golden Globes are very much a like press-based consensus on categories, and then you have all your specialist.
We should say that sometimes the Golden Globes are quite weird.
Yes,
Like
that's a great.
Yeah.
the
Yes.
Hollywood foreign
Well,
press can vote some really
Yes.
weird ways, because I think it's an international contingent of media, and sometimes they favour particular actors and stuff.
Not necessarily so much about artistic merit.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Sometimes
when-
it's a game of favourites.
You're
Yeah,
thinking
because
about
celebrity
you're thinking about The
access
Tourist, like as one of those examples,
Exactly.
right? Like which was not a good film
Not a good
in any
yeah.
way, shape, or form, and probably shouldn't have even been nominated in the year that it took home some trophies.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
and-
I think they're probably a little more accurate on the TV side versus the movie side. Maybe broadly speaking, Golden
Yeah.
Globes might fall a little more along, in keeping with other guilds and stuff
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
TV side, but the films can be quite odd.
Because that award show happens really early on in the season, they also really love seemingly to set the agenda
Yes.
of the year. And so 1917,
Yes.
when I saw 1917, I really enjoyed it, but I didn't walk out of the theatre going, this is a film I'm going to be thinking about and talking about in years to come. It was like a really effective thriller, and technically, from a cinematography point of view, from an editing point of view, there's some great stuff in it.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel like it was going to really even be in the conversation for director or definitely not best picture for me.
Interestingly, I did think it would be a contender, because I feel like and I was wrong on my sweepstake, I feel like what it did, which I think that particularly the Oscar voters like generally, and Parasite did as well, is use the medium of cinema really well. So where smaller films, and I'm thinking of things like Marriage Story, and even to some degree the likes of Jojo Rabbit, those are stories, nobody shoot me, that could be told on TV. I mean, that's why Marriage Story is something you can watch on Netflix, and it's a great dramatic story, but it doesn't need the scale of cinema to be told. Whereas I feel like 1917 is a movie. It's a big, fat, old-fashioned movie, and Oscars generally love those films.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I think I kind of mean more like I didn't walk away thinking anything after it,
Yeah.
or really revisiting the experience.
Yes.
Like when I was in
Yeah.
it, I was immersed,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
there was sort of no post effect of that film. But then back to the Globes, like they also, recognized this movie that barely anyone had seen at the time, and that was a real agenda setting decision. And it felt to me at the time that they were doing, as much as anything else, they were trying to say to the public, you should see this film, rather than necessarily
It's a big
going,
promotion,
this
you
is
mean?
the Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was kind of how I thought this awards
Yeah.
season kicked off.
Yeah, the Globes, I mean, it does just seem like it's a bit more of a party, and you shouldn't really take it as seriously as the other awards, which
Yeah.
are much more actually celebratory of actual true artistic merit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do we think of Ricky Gervais? Okay,
Back
fifth
again.
Time?
Yeah.
Fifth time in a row.
Yeah.
Yikes! Maybe
yeah.
time to.
I'm pretty mixed. Like, I love the roast on the one hand, right?
Same.
Like the
Yeah.
roast has its great moments, but he's just such a cock.
See,
You
I
wanna hear
don't
the monologue.
mind the fact that
That's
he's a
it.
cock, and I think in some ways
Yeah.
it brings something to that ceremony, because there is a kind of like, you could poo-poo the Globes. It makes it kind of watchable, if not for the train wreck of him roasting all of those people in the room. That kind of, I like the fact that they're open to the danger, where the Oscars and some of those other ceremonies are not. Like, that actually feels,
It's true.
I kind of wish, we were referencing this briefly previously about Oscars being hostless. It's like, I think treating that danger line is not a silly thing from a ratings point of view.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
True,
absolutely.
true.
And despite my feelings about him being a giant bully who has some very ethically compromised attitudes, and also just loves tearing into
Anyone.
ways of thought that seem pretty common sense. Anyway, besides that, I jumped on and watched the Globes from its opening seconds because I wanted to see what he'd do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So-
exactly right.
So
Yeah.
despite
Me
my
too.
personal feelings about him, I had to watch it.
And
makes
even if
him
it's a
pretty-
hate watch, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're kind of, a hate
Yeah.
watch is better than a mediocre, like, which felt a little bit like what the Oscars did.
Don't don't get me wrong. That opportunity to publicly lambast people while they're sitting in a room of their peers, he takes full advantage of. But where it doesn't work for me is when he begins to lecture people
Yes.
based on his own ideologies.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
that idea that don't come up here and thank God, don't come up here and you're all hypocrites. It's like, well, that's interesting, because the very first winner of the night came up and thanked God. He didn't do it in the English language,
Yes.
but to Ricky Gervais, he's still doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then the second award winner of the night was Russell Crowe, and according to Ricky Gervais, he was doing something wrong as well by not attending the Globes and sending a message about the environment, because he was worried that his house was going to get burnt down.
Yeah.
So I think that there's,
Yeah.
while I can enjoy his performance, there's some inconsistencies in it that feed into my general dislike of
Yeah.
the man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fair enough.
He made some pretty good burns. I
He did.
quite liked the
yeah.
Weinstein. I mean, that kind
the
of
bird,
had to be said,
the
right?
bird box one.
joke.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah.
Where he said, gosh, I can't remember the actual
It
joke.
was
but
it was
it's
something
turning a
about
blind eye, just pretending
Yeah.
that you don't see anything, just like all of you did with Weinstein.
Yeah.
That
I-
was a good burn.
I found with his roast, there would always be a camera on Tom Hanks who looked so disappointed.
Yes.
Because he's been in the game for years, and he probably has a real love and appreciation for all the stuff that goes on.
Yeah.
and for
he's
someone to
notoriously a really nice guy.
and yeah, he is like the nice guy.
Yeah.
And sort of having someone come up and just kind of roast, I guess, what your life would be,
Yeah.
can probably be quite disheartening. But again, it does always come back to the Globes sort of showing that it takes itself seriously, but also does not, because well, what's up with like the comedy and musical awards?
Oh, that
they're
category?
always
Yeah.
it's so strange. It's kind of
feels very old school,
It's
eh?
kind of like,
Yeah.
oh, we can't quite decide what we want to win Best Picture, so let's do another
Yeah,
one.
there's a real hedging of bets there, and
Yeah.
we just like giving out trophies,
Yeah.
lots and lots of trophies.
Yeah.
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 But it's good, and it's great to be able to see something get more recognition. And I think that when you look at the subsequent awards that are more like guild and specialist oriented, they also get the opportunity to shine a light on a broader range of films than
Yeah.
you get at the Oscars, where
Yeah.
all those categories really narrow into the specifics.
And I think it's very hard often for a comedy to compete against a drama,
Yeah.
film wise
That's
and
right.
even television wise. There's a sort of minimalization of comedy versus drama, like an emotional, powerful, hard hitting drama
Yeah.
story.
It's
Well,
considered more prestige.
of
Yeah.
course,
You
versus
hear-
a comedy, and so actually having them out on their own kind of at least gives them a look in, because otherwise
Yeah.
they might miss out altogether.
Yeah.
You hear
yeah.
possibly apocryphal stories of a film screening to critics and people being overheard having this is a story I've heard a couple of variations of, so maybe it's not even true, but overhearing critics after the lights come up after a comedy saying how much they love the film, but it's a comedy, so of course I'm only going to give it 3 stars.
Yeah.
So just the genre itself is not a prestige genre.
Yeah, and it's very hard for comedic actors to cut through. I mean, I think that's the interesting thing about Fleabag.
Yeah.
You know, that I mean, it's not outright comedy. There is obviously drama in the mix as well.
Yeah.
It can be quite dark at times, but I think the fact that she gets so much acknowledgement across the board, even in, I mean, I saw recently she's nominated in the New York Festivals Awards, which are small and they're a little sort of advertising industry actually awards, but she's even nominated in that against internationally drama actresses across the board.
Well, here's a hypothesis though. Do you think that Phoebe Waller-Bridge would have the same, and her work would have the same respect if it hadn't come from the stage and instead she'd come from Saturday Night Live? Like, would it still be
It's a
viewed
good
with the same
observation.
prestige?
Yeah.
Because I don't think it would be.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
it's still, if the product was identical, it would still be hugely popular and have recognition. But I think that part of her, like her backstory, from coming from the fringe and coming from credible places,
Yes.
and frankly, like to get awards in America and being British probably helps a little bit
Yes.
when you're in this terrain too.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
yes.
there's just all these funny things that always happen in the background of awards and
that's
these
an
narratives that
interesting
form.
Yeah.
observation. I thought it was quite cool actually in one of the speeches, acceptance speeches, the one where all rolling into one, all these awards shows, but when Donald Glover delivered the Britannia Award, I think it was it the BAFTAs?
Yeah.
So he did this amazing intro talking about how he wanted to really hate her because she was so cool and successful and funny, and he had a show that should have been. Oh, keep knocking this thing. I'm talking too much with my hands.
No, you're good.
How he wanted to feel. He wanted to feel the sense of competition because he had Atlanta and she had Fleabag, and Fleabag was so much cooler and more successful, and then he met her and was just like, I mean, I fell in love with her like everyone else. But she came up and made this really cool comment about how Amazon chose to commission Fleabag. They didn't choose to remake it for an American audience, which I thought was, it's good on Amazon for doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that's a good trail there, is in terms of like creative freedom for filmmakers. You see things like Amazon Studios, A24, they seem to give more creative freedom for these filmmakers. So like, I'd never heard of A24 until Moonlight won Best Picture when I was in studies and things like that. And now you have films like The Green Knight coming out, which just look like they have bigger budgets, bigger scale, and they're moving forward. But in that, there's that creative freedom, and they kind of go through the indie film sort of path, going through film festivals, getting recognition there, and then pushing it out. And there's also been other films like The Farewell, which were pushed out by A24, which the director said that she thought it was the reason why people could see the film is because of A24, because they know what to do with those like independently made films.
Dare we say, are they the new Weinstein company? In terms of festival,
Right,
you know, like that was the thing that the Weinstein company did really well, was work the festival circuit. I mean, and sorry, the awards circuit in particular. But like they knew how to market films. It's really important. I mean, it goes back to what you were saying, Steve, around the kind of perceptions and the narratives of the film. It starts off with that marketing, and if you've got a company like A24 behind you that kind of knows how to work the system from the get-go, they have these days perhaps better cut through than some of the bigger studios.
I can't really think of an equivalent where like your experience, right? It's like you've developed an affinity to a studio, which is pretty uncommon, right? Like there's a coolness that's associated with A24. You go to their, please don't go to their online merch shop because it's really hard to buy their stuff. It keeps selling out. But they sell a lot of merch that's just promoting their own studio. But, you know, apart from being a vile human being, Harvey Weinstein was notoriously prone to a couple of things. One was chopping people's films to ribbons. And the other was inventing the new way of winning Oscars. That was like, he pioneered things like really aggressively going into retirement homes, targeting older Oscar voters, attacking like every component of the voting body to get those things across the line. And it's kind of horrible to think that anyone would follow in any of his footsteps.
And
really.
back when he was around and working in the industry and as a giant, you'd hear all of the acceptance speeches saying he's like the school bully who would just like push for like Daniel Day-Lewis when he was like in his heyday was just like in I think it was every speech thanked Harvey.
Oh, I mean, he was like before God. People thanked him.
Yeah. Because he was like
he got them there.
Because he could just blacklist anybody he wanted. He could decide who worked in the industry, and he had involvement with Lord of the Rings and things like that as well.
Yeah.
And some actresses just couldn't get parts because they're difficult to work with. Right.
Yes,
So
you know.
He had some great run-ins with director Bong, who made Parasite. So Snowpiercer was a Miramax film. And Harvey wanted to do what he always would do, which is cut the film back because he thought he knew best about what finished film should be. And so he'd have these fights. There's one great story where he was trying to cut a scene out that Bong wanted in his film, and he realized in the middle of the conversation that the best thing to do was like invent a lie about why it should stay in. He's like, no, this scene's really important to me. It was a scene with some fish, like a fish scene. He's like, my father was a fishmonger, and just made it up on the spot. And Weinstein was like, oh, the most important thing's family. That stays in. But they'd still continue to fight about the film.
Yeah.
And the other thing that Weinstein would do is he'd test your film and then use the audience responses to justify all of his opinions, but none of yours. And Bong won the right to screen his own film himself and basically do the same thing. So they could screen different cuts and have a look at how each of them performed. I can't remember the town it was in, but the one that Weinstein chose to screen the film in to win his argument that, you know, it should have less talking and it should have more action and should just be shorter.
More explosions.
Was the same town that the same town that Bong sets the end of Okja in, where his giant pig has gone to the slaughter, and so he's been just jabbing away at this guy.
Wow.
And I think that really Parasite's triumph is kind of the final repudiation of that.
I've heard Bong's really
unpleasant,
funny.
unpleasant
It's a
relationship.
great story.
Yeah,
That's
it's
a
a
great
really good
story. That's
story.
kind of like an added bonus. The end coda to Harvey's downfall, right?
Yeah,
great.
Parasite. God, what a great movie. I loved every second of Bong being on stage
Same.
this award season.
Yeah.
That he's just such a treat to watch. He's so clearly loved being recognised and, you know, in such a humble way. I loved that he thanked Scorsese in that really
Oh, that was
authentic
beautiful.
way.
It made me almost
Yeah.
I was on the verge
No.
of tears during his speech.
I'm terrible at award seasons. I'm just
Yeah.
like crying the whole time. I love seeing him being recognised and him being so grateful.
Yeah.
And what an amazing artistic piece of work he made and was so gratefully received by the world. And what he said about Tarantino, like
Yep.
Yeah.
American audiences didn't know about my work, and then Tarantino would always reference it in his best of lists. And he even referenced Texas Chainsaw Massacre. What a cool guy.
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
be his friend.
That was
Yeah,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
seemed like a great dude. I thought the
Yeah.
same thing. Like just really gracious and grateful and delightful. It was
Yeah.
awesome to watch.
Yeah, definitely.
It was interesting to see him, like his moment on the big stage was really different to Taika Waititi's moment on the big stage. And I think that part of the reasoning behind that was that, you know, like Bong had, not dismissively, but accurately, had described the Oscars as like a regional awards show.
Yeah.
You know, like we think of this as the Paramount, pardon the pun, kind of award, but really, like it's representative of
Yeah.
a certain, you know, a certain part of the world making films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even with this kind of tinkering of best foreign language film this year to call it
Best
something else to make it
international,
sound
yeah.
less
Yeah.
prejudicial, it's still
Yeah.
like, you know, really shows that we that those awards, you know, have a bit of a ghetto for certain types of films.
Yes.
I'm sure that the Academy are patting themselves on the back. Haven't stopped since Parasite won multiple awards and
Yeah.
you know, created history in doing so. But it will be really interesting to see how long it takes for another film that's not in English to,
Yes.
to do
Yeah.
the same. And
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
I think there'll be a bit of like job's done feeling for a little while.
Because there were only two foreign language, or now international. There were two films in this year's international category that were one being Parasite and the other one being the Honey documentary, I think, that were in another category outside of the international one. And I think, like, you know, you watch those films and technically, creatively, everything about them is wonderful, often better than some of the other best whatever category nominees. And it's like they don't even get a look in, you know, and that's just, I think it is just bias on the part of the voters, really.
Absolutely. I think, like, just returning to that point from earlier, understanding that voting process is super important. So nominations are shaped by the members of individual guilds. So, you know, cinematographers select the nominees, editors and so on. But then that final voting is open to all Academy members. Whereas, you know, the awards that happen between the Globes and the Oscars that are in the specialist categories are specialists picking specialist winners. That can help shape the narrative, because it can help tell someone that might just work in production that all these other people that work in these specialist industries think this one's the best. But you'd have to really wonder how many of the the ticks on the voting form or clicks on the online voting form now are by people who are buying into stories about films rather than actually maybe even having seen them at all.
Well, often that, you know, you read those insider ballot kind of stories that are on the trade websites and stuff, and it's like, haven't watched it, but I heard that it's really good. Or, you know, I mean, I think even Toy Story winning, it's like that didn't win. Maybe it won some stuff at the Annies, which is the Animation Guild Awards or whatever they are, but it's like, it's Toy Story 4. It's an easy box to tick, right? Because it's like, you know, they're not going to cock it up. It's going to be okay. So it's an easy, just like, okay. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad film, and I don't have an opinion either way on that particular category, but it's like, it did stick out to me that
it's easy to tick.
That's where things vote. The votes get split in very different ways.
It's a brain recognition exercise.
Absolutely.
The other really interesting thing from those anonymous voting stories, like Hollywood Reporter ran a bunch of really good ones this year, is that the kind of weird horse trading of, like, I think this about the film, and so even though I think it might be really strong in this area, I've voted for it in this other category over here, so I won't do it over here. It's like, how's that got anything to do with
there's no
the actual end product of this process?
No voting on merit. The other thing that I actually didn't know until this year was that Best Director is the nominees are chosen from the 5 top voted films.
Eesh.
So there was never a chance that Jojo Rabbit was going to be winning Best Picture because Taika wasn't nominated for Best Director.
Oh, I see.
So FYI, anybody that has sweepstakes, there's a tip.
I did not know that either.
I read the rules. That's how nerdy I got this year in terms of my
Oscar rulebook.
My very competitive Oscar ballot competition that I am part of.
I'm embarrassed. I read the rules this year as well. I didn't pick up on that at all. I went down the rabbit hole of preferential voting and ballot stacks and taking out the lowest voted ballots.
I'm glad somebody's as nerdy as me. But yeah.
And then I did really shit at them.
I might be wrong. Maybe I've misinterpreted it, but that was how I read it.
Who did you put money on winning Best Picture?
I bought the 1917
Same.
because I try so hard now not to make my picks based on my emotions, because that always is disappointing.
I literally have the official ballot, which is an online one that we can't change in our very competitive, like, we trash talk each other online group. And then I kind of, in past years, I didn't do it this year, I have my emotional heart ballot that I've printed out and that I've ticked the ones that I actually want to win. So I kind of can be satisfied depending on which way it falls. It's kind of lame.
No, not lame.
Bit tragic.
The and you know, that momentum that 1917 had, because the Oscars actually vote so late, like, they're massively influenced by
what's run,
all the things that have happened previously. Like, the voting, I think, happened from maybe the 29th of Jan is when voting actually started on the winners, and it only lasted for like a few days. So there's, you know, the actual practicality of people sitting down with a clear head and blanking everything out, watching a movie and thinking about it is like close to zero at that point. It's really
100%,
influenced by all the stories that support the process.
Yeah, totally. I was the same as you. I put 1917 for my best picture
Mm-hmm.
because I bought the.
Yeah, I did not
Bought the
think
story.
Parasite was gonna.
I just didn't think
Gonna
that
do
it
it.
would get
So
there.
great that it
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
I see. I gave into my feelings, and I hope to God that it would get Best Picture because it was one of those. It's one of those films where you walk out the cinema and you're reminded why you love cinema so much.
Yeah.
Those stories,
Yeah.
from its visuals to its
Yeah.
stories, everything about it was just like spot on.
It's there was real, and I think 1917 had this to a lot of the degree as well. But you can see the care and the love in the film.
Yeah.
From from the art department to the. I mean, God, that house was amazing. I just want to move into it and steal
Yeah.
all of the furniture. Somebody build me the Parasite house.
Yeah.
And that was a set that they built so that they could block the scenes the way because they needed to be able to shoot through the rooms to see people watching people. So
Yeah.
they actually constructed that set. I mean, it should have won production design as well, TBH.
absolutely.
Although
Yeah.
1917 was a very good production design because they
Yeah.
obviously needed that art department to work for the way they were shooting the film.
Yeah, yeah.
But same with Parasite, and I just thought it was beautiful. But you could see the care that had been taken at every aspect of that film. The lighting was the mix of practical lighting and it was just glorious.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it's
good.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Quentin Tarantino really picked the wrong year to make Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yes.
Those,
Oh,
you
they
know,
did.
Oh, sorry, that was the one that won
That was
production.
that was production design.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and really, like, I mean, I love that film.
Me
It
too.
is, maybe not his most accessible, and it has a huge degree of indulgence. But there were so many things about it that fed into what you'd sort of think about the Oscar voter liking, and that's like
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
films about films, they love
Yeah.
films about Los Angeles,
Yes.
they love the golden years,
Yeah.
all these things.
Yeah.
But he just, it's just the wrong year for that film because there were two things that captured everybody's attention, and all the oxygen went out of the room.
Yeah.
And then probably the next most talked about film would have been The Irishman, but the conversation about that wasn't how many Oscars will it win, it was more how many Oscars will it lose. I think
Yeah.
that film, because
And I think
of just really it's, everything that's been discussed about that pick already.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
never really, a chance. It was nominated for 10 Academy Awards,
Yeah.
but it was not really a chance
There was.
for any
I
of
don't
them.
think. I don't think there was a chance. And there were two. I found an interesting link between those two films. Is I found they really reflected both the directors' lives.
yes.
100% was
Yeah.
like when you see the end of The Irishman, you go, "That's so how Scorsese's feeling at the moment." Because it's probably the because he's like, "Let's not make it another gangster movie."
Yeah.
But it was so a reflection on his life.
Yes.
Because they got how do you say his last name? Joe.
Pesci.
Yeah, got him out of retirement to do that, make that film together, and then the ending. Spoiler alert: is that he's just sitting in a retirement village alone, and
Yeah.
maybe that gangster life is a reflection on his life as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Who knows? The same with Tarantino. If it's like his childhood that he wanted to recreate, and how, and that can come back to the casting. And this is what I was keen to talk about: is Brad Pitt coming back
It's
into
a
the
great year
light.
for him.
Yeah, and then he's saying he's leaving, like to just sort of do his own thing for a bit, and how that kind of casting I thought was very strategic with DiCaprio playing not that he's a dying out movie star, but he's definitely not what he was like 5 years ago. He does like one film a year
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
most.
He's saving the
They're in
world.
transition.
He's
Those
saving the world.
those actors from types of one type of role to another. I
Yeah,
think.
I mean, I
definitely,
was
yeah.
interested because I actually thought that Brad's the fact that he was nominated for supporting, like, I was more engaged with his story in the film than I was with
100%.
Leo's,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
think
Yeah.
that and I know that it's about screen time in
Mm.
terms of how that's the difference between supporting and lead, but yeah, I felt like Brad was almost, for me, he was the lead in the film. Like,
Some great
Yeah.
acceptance speech moments, and he was one
Yeah.
of the
Oh,
few.
he just wanted to be his
stars.
mate.
Totally, yeah. Like, how
Seems
cool
so
was that?
genuine.
Was it the Golden Globes where he was like, "I'm gonna update my Tinder profile"?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
Oscars, he was just delightful, like
Yeah.
literally just warm
Really.
and lovely and humble and beautiful. It was
But
like,
also one of the few stars this award season to get political. In his speech, he
Yeah.
mentioned the impeachment and acquittal and how it was a sad week for America. And
Yeah.
there was I felt like there was actually a surprising lack of political talk in this award season, and it's such an important year
Yeah.
to be talking about what's going on
And then
in
Joaquin
America
came
and the
in.
UK.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Joaquin came in and made his certainty to win awards. Like he was never going to. Nothing he said on the stage felt like he was going to jeopardize his Oscar. Like that Oscar was a lock, right? So he could do whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm like, there's like a little bit of sort of suspicion in the back of my mind about him still, about his rehabilitation process from going from complete fuckwit to back to being somewhat of an accepted figure again. But there's no doubt for me that, you know, he chose to use that platform for things that were important to him.
Yeah.
And really, like, I never really thought that that Joker was a film that merited the type of critical acclaim it received.
Really?
Yeah.
But his performance undoubtedly did.
Yeah.
But his,
I did.
But his,
See, I love
we'll
Joker.
come back.
It's one of my picks of the year.
If we come back to that in just a sec, he made his speech, like nothing in his speeches at all was about the film.
No.
So his award season kind of overshadowed the film that he was in
Yes.
almost entirely.
Yeah, it was like he'd moved on.
Yeah.
It was funny actually in the Oscars speech because he meant, you know, he was like, in the words of my brother, during the vegan bit, because I have a particular ritual of watching with a very good friend and we kind of yell things at the screen in a very unrestrained way. And I was like, oh, what, is he going to bring his dead brother into the mix now? And cue the quote from River Phoenix. So,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, if there was a bingo card, I should have won something.
That's with the Joker character, it's a controversial character for sure. And for me, I thought his performance made that film very cinematic to me, like his movements and things like that. And but you can also see, in my opinion, a bit of a cock up of the role, Jared Leto, and coming from a great from like Heath Ledger. Do you think like how does one like get sort of momentum for that character to win just Oscars? Because it sort of seems like one of those roles that if you do it right, you're guaranteed some recognition for it, whether it's positive or negative. What do you guys think on that?
Well, it's for a start, he got to do the classic consider giving me award of I'm going to physically transform my body and I'm
Christian
going
Bale
to,
vibes.
I'm going to emaciate myself and I'm going to contort and I'm going to be tortured. Like to a small degree, I don't know how like tinfoil hat this is, but in a background of Me Too and in a background of embracing of diversity, how funny that a film about how unfortunate it is to be a white male, suddenly a whole lot of people rallied behind it this year. I think that to some degree Joker's reaction to Joker is about people that are unsettled about their place in the world right now, as he is in that film. It's not, you know, maybe having more sympathy with the character than is necessarily intended.
We did dedicate his whole speech at the BAFTAs to how there was a lack of diversity in the nominations of the BAFTAs, and how he was going to sort of made a public pact to do more and make sure that the projects that he takes on hereafter are more inclusive.
That was my favourite of his speeches.
Me too.
Because what he did was, like, you know, to go back to Gervais and his criticisms of posturing, which even at the Golden Globes, Phoenix was great at himself, you know, reflecting on his own behaviour. But at the BAFTAs, he identified the problem. He called out the very place that he was. He examined himself and he made a commitment of what he was going to do. And so that's platforming in a very meaningful sense. Presuming he goes on with it. But that's like, you know, that's how that feels like the best possible way to raise an issue and atone for your own involvement in that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. On a final note, what do you guys hope for in the future of the industry and of the awards? Like, is it something like, is there types of stories that you want to see? Is there sort of, obviously there's a call for diversity and things like that. What are your sort of predictions for the next year and as films are rolling in?
Selfishly, I want Adam Sandler and Eddie Murphy to win Academy Awards.
I would love Eddie Murphy. Not Adam Sandler for me, but Eddie Murphy 100 times yes.
Two hugely overlooked films last year.
One of the best films
100%,
I've seen in a long, long time.
Except for those weird opening titles.
Yeah.
I'm real judgy on the opening titles.
I think that was a nod to like 2012 films. It was so because like the Sadie brothers are just they're new to the game, but I reckon they're so aware of what they're doing, and it's only a matter of time before things like Good Time was like, oh, maybe an Oscar. Uncut Gem, oh, maybe an Oscar. There'll be a point where it will get to that level.
Has to.
Yeah.
And
it will just keep
that,
going.
again, that comes back to, I think, that they just kind of need that little bit of oomph marketing behind
100%.
them, because actually they deliver the goods. It kind of feels like they just, they did that Netflix deal, which kind of ruled them out of the competition for a lot of those awards. And it's like, go do the Netflix deal. I totally get why you would do that, but it's
on a broader sense, other than just like championing things I like, what I'd love to see happen is that the Parasite effect not just be a blip, and that people also don't treat this film like homework, because the reality is that far too few people have still seen Parasite.
Yes.
It's great. It's continued to sell tickets here in New Zealand and worldwide. The Oscar bump has been real for that film. But see this film. Please don't think it's homework. I think that's probably my fear, that people will go, it's a foreign language film, people talk about it, how meaningful it is, and after a while you just start to like, I've got these films, right? I've got these blind spots, which is basically, I know I need to see it, but to be honest, I don't feel like it tonight, and then that goes on for days and weeks and months. But Parasite is not that film. It's a really engaging watch, and I hope people really get stuck into it.
I think on that same thread, one of the facts that I've heard recently is that there's a Netflix effect around subtitles in a positive sense. So the average viewer is now, I can't tell you exactly what, I wish I had done my research before, but there's some exponential percentage that they are more likely now to watch subtitled content with the advent of Netflix and good content on Netflix. And so foreign language content generally, international content generally, is becoming more acceptable to the average viewer. So you think about something, and going back to the TV thing, like Chernobyl, which was, that kind of weird affront in the first few scenes where it was English-speaking voices in a very Russian story. You kind of wonder if in a few years' time that might be something that could be made in the same way. It was epic and it was amazing, but could it be made with Russian actors? Don't know.
For sure.
They're making their own Chernobyl,
yes,
which is the true story of Chernobyl, which is I think like the state did nothing at all wrong, and it's just some accident.
It's going to be. I'm actually quite keen to see it.
We can
watch that.
Have you heard about the Parasite HBO event series that's coming up? I'm not sure if that's in English language or Korean.
I think it is English language, but that's the Adam McKay produced series, I think. But it's a 6-hour series that is it going to expand the story of Parasite somewhat. But I think it is it's a elongated remake, is my understanding of that.
There's definitely a call for getting past that little barrier of subtitles and unlocking that whole world of film, as Bong said. But we also have to wrap up now. We could sit here talking all day without a doubt.
Well, let's turn the cameras off and just
let's just keep yarning. We got beers in the fridge. We can start a bit early and just have some more yarns. But thank you so much for coming on.
Can I just say one more thing? I would not be doing my job if I didn't say that most of the film and TV that we've talked about, and in fact most of the film and TV that won awards this season is available to view on one of Sky's various products.
100%, yeah. So Sky, Flicks, all of that is the key to accessibility to these beautiful films in New Zealand. So 100% would recommend jumping on that. So from streaming to actual previews. So you got heaps of streaming access through Sky, and you've got all the preview and movie time access via Flicks with reviews. Would 100% recommend.
Thank you.
100%. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
He's right.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much, and we will catch you guys in our next stream. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.